Well, welcome everyone. A warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Mueller from the Canadian Red Cross, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Thank you again for joining us. It's an information session on the Emergency Community Support Fund, Round 2. And a few words just before we get started. Today's session, we're planning that it will run for about 1 hour. For the best viewing experience, we recommend that you close down all of your other applications and your browsers. That allows Zoom to work a little bit more better. I think we've all experienced our challenges with Zoom over the past several months. We are providing English Sign Language interpretation, and if you would like to access this service, the best way to do it is to pin the video of our ESL interpreter to the top of your screen. And to do this, you hover your mouse over the interpreter's video thumbnail. On my screen, she's at the top of the screen there. You'll see 3 dots appear. Select Pin Video, and that will ensure that the interpreter will stay on your screen at all times. If you need some technical assistance with that, please just message Jacqueline at Communications Community Foundations, and she'll be able to help you out. For any Francophones who might be on the call, please note there is a French language session that's going to be held at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon. The registration link is going to be available in the chat section, so if you prefer to use that session, please use the link for there. And today's presentation is being recorded. It will be available for viewing online later today or tomorrow at the latest on the websites of all 3 organizations that are presenting today: Community Foundations, the Red Cross, and United Way. So as we get started, I'll do a quick walkthrough through the agenda, and I am pleased to be joined by representatives from the 3 organizations that are working with the federal government to flow this funding to the community groups: Community Foundations of Canada, the Canadian Red Cross, and United Way Centraide Canada. We'll begin with an overview of the Emergency Community Support Fund and the second round of funding. We'll hear about the fund's goals, the criteria to apply, and what each intermediary is doing and supporting. A representative from each intermediary will then outline how the fund is being administered through their own organizations, with details about how the community organizations can apply. And time permitting, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. I encourage you to post your questions in the chat box as we go along, and we'll answer as many as we can in the Q&A session. I'd like to introduce today's speakers and panelists. We have Andrea Dix. She is President of Community Foundations of Canada. Melanie Thomas is Senior Director, Community Foundations of Canada. Deborah Scheim is Vice President, Community Initiatives, United Way Centraide Canada. And Emily Pietropalo, she's the Senior Director of Recovery Services at the Canadian Red Cross. Andrea will get us started with an overview of the ECSF. Andrea, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and good afternoon, good morning to everyone who has joined us today. Our experience over the last 6 months, and in fact, even longer than that, has shown us that COVID-19 does not impact all Canadians equally. It is those who are struggling or who are on the margins who are bearing the brunt of this health crisis and economic crisis more profoundly. Through the Government of Canada's $350 million Emergency Community Support Fund, which was first launched in May, the Canadian Red Cross, Community Foundations of Canada, and United Way Centraide Canada have been proud to play a role in supporting more than 7,000 community projects, helping those who need it most. Now, as we enter or have already entered a second wave, we are preparing and renewing our support. Starting yesterday, October the 5th, the final installment of the $350 million was released by the federal government so that we can continue to flow support to charities and nonprofit organizations like all of yours who are serving our most vulnerable. This is the ECSF's second and final round of funding. Applications are now open across all 3 organizations and will be until October 30th, 2020. We want to take a moment to talk about the selection criteria. If you are already familiar with the ECSF from round 1, the selection criteria remains essentially the same. Projects should address a pressing need. They should serve 1 or more populations experiencing increased vulnerability due to the pandemic. They should be carried out within a reasonable time frame and budget, and should not be receiving funding for the same project costs from another intermediary or federal funding source. It is important to note that applicants who applied and received funding in round 1 can reapply, provided it is not for the same project costs. Organizations who applied in round 1 but were not awarded funding can reapply. My colleagues will speak to this in more detail in just a few moments. As was mentioned by Kathy already, and as you know by the speakers, there are 3 organizations who are the intermediaries for the Emergency Community Support Fund. That includes Community Foundations of Canada, United Way Centraide Canada, and the Canadian Red Cross. All 3 are flowing funds to community-based organizations. Now this slide, don't be intimidated. This is a flow chart that helps you to determine which organization you should apply to. Again, for those of you who are familiar from round 1 as to where you should apply, it remains the same. Registered charities or qualified donees can apply to either United Way or Community Foundations of Canada. Nonprofit organizations can apply to the Canadian Red Cross. You can view this infographic at your leisure at the link which is posted in the chat or will be momentarily posted there. With that, I will turn it back to you, Kathy.
Great, thank you so much, Andrea. Next, I'd like to invite Melanie Thomas, Senior Director at Community Foundations Canada, to outline the funding program at CFC.
Thank you, Kathy. Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Thomas. Welcome to my home, and thank you so much for joining today. I am with Community Foundations of Canada. We are the national umbrella to 191 community foundations across the country. Our purpose is to relentlessly pursue a future where everyone belongs. Community foundations are philanthropic organizations that direct grants, leadership, and other investments towards community initiatives. More than 90% of communities across Canada have access to a community foundation. Through the Emergency Community Support Fund, we are ensuring 100% coverage across Canada. Qualified donees from coast to coast to coast can apply. We are using the strength of our community foundations, relying on local decision-making for the ECSF. Our local community foundations will review and approve applications. As I mentioned, we are ensuring 100% coverage, so any region that is not covered by a local community foundation, please apply to Community Foundations of Canada in the application form. To find the nearest community foundation to you, please check out our website at www.communityfoundations.ca. If we could go to the next slide. For the Emergency Community Support Fund, we will be supporting qualified donees who are running projects at the community level that serve populations that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see examples of qualified donees, including registered charities, First Nations, and other municipal or public bodies registered as qualified donees with Canada Revenue Agency. For more information, please visit the CRA website. So the purpose of the ECSF is to provide immediate financial support for projects that are serving populations who have been disproportionately impacted as they manage COVID-19. The golden rule around eligible expenses, as Andrea mentioned, is that there's just no double dipping. Applicants cannot receive funding twice for the same project costs. So if you've received funding from another intermediary through the ECSF or through another source that covers those specific project costs, you can't receive funding again for them this round. So for example, if you were successful in round one and you received funding to cover project costs for purchasing cell phones and laptops, you can't apply for funding to cover the same costs of purchasing those same cell phones and laptops. But if you were successful in round one for funding to cover purchasing food hampers, and those have all been distributed, you can apply again to purchase more food hampers. Qualified donees may apply for more than one grant as long as each application describes a distinct project. The exception is if you're a national or provincial organization, and I'll explain more about that shortly. Grants are up to a maximum of $75,000, but please check with your community foundation who may have a lower maximum. We could go to the next slide. Thank you. The application portal is open right now, and we are accepting applications until October 30th. So please apply quickly. You can visit, again, our website, www.communityfoundations.ca to apply. Applicants, if we follow the timeline, applicants will find out if they've been successful by December 15th. And if we follow it along again, projects and related project costs must take place by March 31st. So all the grants you receive through the second round must be spent on your project by March 31st, 2021. That May, the reports from grant recipients are due. Applicants must apply to their local community foundation where the project is taking place. The exception is for some national provincial organizations who will apply to our national provincial stream. If you go to the next slide. CFC is administering a separate stream for national provincial organizations to apply. National provincial organizations applying to the stream are eligible to apply one time to the ECSF. As I mentioned, this is different than other organizations who can apply for multiple projects, distinct projects. The National Provincial Stream awards grants up to $200,000 to qualified donees. To help your organization determine if they should apply to the stream, we've created a decision tree that you can see in front of you that's available on our website, as well as written guidelines and examples in our applicant guide and frequently asked questions. So broadly, if we go through this decision tree in front of us, first, if you could direct your attention to the upper left-hand corner where it says start, and you will move through the diagram from left to right. First, you must determine if your organization has a mission and mandate to serve communities, province, or nationwide. If your mission and mandate only serves a region, let's say Northern British Columbia, you would apply to the relevant community foundations where you operate. But if your organization does have a mission and mandate to serve communities, province, or nationwide, then you must look to see if your organization and any of its chapters shares one CRA number, or if each chapter has a distinct CRA number. So to illustrate this, let's use a hypothetical example. Organization ABC Canada is applying for round 2. It's a national organization with local chapters across the country to deliver services to help improve children's literacy with at-home kits. The national office is a distinct legal entity from its local chapters. So ABC Canada has its CRA number, and its members, such as ABC Calgary or ABC Winnipeg, each have their own unique, distinct CRA numbers, even though they're all part of the ABC network. In this case, the National Provincial Office, if they're delivering a project that meets the eligibility, can apply to the national provincial stream. Its local chapters, unless they're serving an entire province, would apply to the relevant local community foundation in their area. But let's try another example. This time, ABC Canada and all of their local chapters share the same CRA number. Because they have a national mission and mandate to serve all of Canada, the head office can apply one time to the national provincial streams, and the local chapters are not eligible to apply to the local community foundations, even for separate projects. If any of these examples sound like your organization, please visit our website and take a closer look at our materials to help you determine where you should apply. In round one, the ECSF had a very high demand, and we anticipate the national provincial stream to also be very competitive. So when you are ready to apply, please visit the application portal to begin. And here is a screenshot of it. Our door is open right now. There are two stages. First, you'll complete an eligibility quiz that's approximately 2 minutes, and then a grant application, which will take approximately 30 minutes. A project budget is mandatory to apply, but we provided a template to assist. In the grant application, if you are located in an area that is not served by a community foundation, or you're applying to the national provincial stream, please select Community Foundations of Canada in the drop-down menu. Otherwise, please select the community foundation where your project will be delivered. We have designed the application with you at the center. We've created a list of resources to assist you with your application, and you can find these on our website, including the applicant guide and frequently asked questions, a list of community foundations participating, a short eligibility quiz, videos that will walk you through the application are coming soon, and you can always reach out to your local community foundation. This is not required, but we are here to help, or feel free to email us at covid19@communityfoundations.ca. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand it back to you, Kathy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Melanie. Our next presenter is Deborah Shine. She's the Vice President of Community Initiatives at United Way Centraide, Canada. Deborah?
Good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Welcome to my home, and thanks to Mel and everybody else for kicking us off today. We're excited to be here and talk with you about the second round of the Emergency Community Support Fund. I want to start by thanking all of you who've been on the ground working so hard to provide services in your community to those in need, and to be adaptive and responsive and resilient to the work that is needed in this difficult and strange time that we find ourselves in. I thought I would take a moment and talk a little bit about United Way Centraide Canada. We are the national office for a network of 77 United Ways and Centraide organizations across Canada. Each United Way or Centraide is a registered charity and is led by a voluntary board of directors. Together, our network of members serves over 5,000 communities across the country, and we are the largest funders of community social services in Canada after government. We are a network of local community builders focused on engaging people in alleviating the conditions of the most vulnerable and building stronger, more prosperous communities for all. From the beginning of the crisis, we have been actively fundraising and working with local municipalities, public health, community agency networks, and supporters to respond to the impacts of COVID-19 on our local communities. We've raised to date over $30 million to contribute back into the community. We have also been fortunate to work with the Government of Canada as an intermediary to invest in local community service organizations that support seniors and individuals and families affected by COVID-19. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the government for their continued partnership in making these vital and much needed investments in local communities across the country. Next slide, please. The majority of United Way Centraide's portion of the Emergency Community Support Fund has been distributed via our local network of United Ways and Centraide members. Their role is to support community service organizations working to provide services that support vulnerable populations impacted by COVID-19. In the first round, our network distributed over $101 million to 3,590 organizations. 52% of those agencies funded were new partners to United Ways and Centraides, and over 41% of our funding went to rural and remote parts of Canada. We will build on our success and follow the same process in the round 2 of the Emergency Community Support Fund. Local application processes are open already as of yesterday to community agencies to apply. United Ways and Centraides will also, in many communities, continue to work with the local community COVID planning table to identify needs. I want to highlight for those of you, because I see people from across the country, that there are 2 exceptions to this open application process. Centraide du Grand Montréal and United Way Northwest Territories will not hold open processes. They both recently closed application processes in their communities and received an overwhelming number of applications. They will use the funds allocated to them to support applications that they were unable to fund in the first round. In those communities, please refer to CFC, Community Foundations of Canada, and the Canadian Red Cross as appropriate for applications to the second round. In addition, as part of our work under the Emergency Community Support Fund, I'm pleased to report that we've been working to expand access to 211 services to all provinces and territories so that individuals across Canada can access 211 in their local community. All of Canada will have access to 211 by mid-November 2020. 211 is a vital community service that helps provide information and referrals through phone, chat, and website searches to ensure that individuals and families have one central place to contact to find out what is available in their community and to get the most up-to-date information, especially as there has been so much change under COVID. We're very pleased about this expansion through the end of March 2021. We're also able to provide surge capacity to support 211 providers to ensure that the information is up to date and that those accessing the services are provided with timely services. Next slide, please. Just like round 1, you do not need to be a currently funded United Way Centraide agency to apply. We remain committed to ensuring that funds are broadly available to community service organizations and agencies working to provide services and support to vulnerable populations impacted by COVID-19 in all provinces and territories. Nonprofits in Canada are also playing an important role in helping to respond to local needs. Some United Ways and Centraides will be funding nonprofits, but not all. In those cases, nonprofit community organizations delivering frontline services may be supported through a qualified donee that is acting as a trustee, or in some cases under an agent agreement. With all applications closing on October 30th, all funding allocations will be made public by the end of the year. Please reach out to your local United Way or Centraide for additional information or support on the application process. United Ways and Centraides are committed to ensuring an open and fair application and review process. They will be working to promote this funding opportunity throughout the communities they work in and to support organizations seeking to apply. Consideration for a number of equity dimensions will guide decisions on how those resources will be allocated locally to ensure that we're reaching those most in need. Next slide, please. As resources are distributed across the country through our local offices, local chapters of national organizations should apply directly to their United Way or Centraide. Obviously, as Mel has highlighted, there is now this opportunity for national and provincial organizations to apply through the Community Foundations of Canada. United Way, Red Cross, and the Community Foundations have worked very closely together, both at the national and local level, to coordinate our approach for registered charities and other qualified donees. And we will continue to do so, especially with the Community Foundations of Canada and the local United Ways. Local United Ways and community foundations in many communities are coordinating on their application and granting decisions locally. You can visit the United Way Centraide Canada website to find out where your local United Way Centraide is and how to apply. And you can search by postal code or by province and click through to the local application page hosted by that local site. We wish you the best of luck, and we thank you again for all of the hard work that you're doing across the country. Back to you, Kathy. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Deborah. I'd like to introduce now our final speaker for the afternoon. Emily Pietropalo is Senior Director of Recovery Services at the Canadian Red Cross. Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us all here today and for joining and taking an hour out of your very, very busy days. So from the Red Cross perspective, we have been very active in COVID response since February. We've continued to support travelers returning from other countries in Canada. Since February, we have also provided a lot of workers to long-term care homes in Quebec. And in addition, we've also provided these 2 different programs as part of the Emergency Community Support Fund. So the Red Cross is offering 2 separate things, and they sort of are targeted to 2 different groups. So the first one is our granting program to nonprofit organizations. The second one is our free personal protective equipment and training program to prevent disease transmission. The second one is available to nonprofits, registered charities, and qualified donees. Next slide. So there's lots of questions about this. I've seen it in the chat, and we've definitely fielded a lot of these questions over the course of the first round. So what's the difference between a nonprofit and a registered charity or a qualified donee? So there's information there on the slide, but to put it as a super high level, if you are a registered charity or qualified donee, your organization has to file a T3010 tax form every year. If you don't file that, you might be a nonprofit. Nonprofits typically tend to file a T2 or a T1044. If you are incorporated, it depends sort of on your specific situation. So that's sort of a super high level. There are some organizations that actually are registered as 2 separate entities. You can be both a charity and a nonprofit. This is not as common in Canada, but we have come across a few of them in the first round. So if you aren't sure, you can just email us, and our email address will be at the end of the presentation, or you can give us a call to our call center. So for the granting program, we have some requirements in terms of who can apply. So again, not be a registered charity or qualified donee. If you are, please visit your local United Way website or your CFC website to find out how to apply to them. You have to be doing direct service delivery to people who are impacted by COVID-19. You should be incorporated or established in Canada. If you aren't incorporated, that's okay. Let us know and we can definitely work with you. We funded many unincorporated organizations to date. You have to have been around since before December 31st, 2019. You have to look at, sort of, we're trying to understand what you do normally and how you've maybe pivoted your activities to deal with COVID. So understanding that you have experience in providing direct service to beneficiaries or clients is really critical for us. You have to have some kind of governance structure. It can be a board, it can be a management committee, it has to be something that oversees the organization, and we're looking for at least 3 people on that committee. And you have to have internal measures in place. And this comes, we kind of look at this through your tax forms, through your financial statements, and the other documents that you'll upload as part of your application form. And then you'll have to apply for one of the 5 funding areas, which is on the next slide. So these are the 5 areas that we're looking to fund. We haven't, in the first round, these are the same as the first round. We haven't found that anyone hasn't been able to fit their activities into one of these. What we're trying to do is not ask you to create a new program or a new project. We want to try and fund existing activities if you have them. If you want to create something new that has come up in your community because of COVID, by all means, please apply for that, but don't feel that it has to be something new. Next slide. So for our program, in terms of the time frame, all the activities and spending has to take place between August 19th, 2020 and February 19th, 2021. So that's a 6-month period. So we can look at retroactive costing in your budget on the application form. You can note if you want any retroactive costs to be covered, and we'll take a look at those. For us, we're asking for you to apply for a minimum grant of $5,000, which from our experience in the first round, that doesn't seem to be a challenge for anyone. And the maximum grant is $100,000. The common question, I see it a lot in the chat, is how many times can you apply? So we're saying you can apply a maximum of 2 times across both rounds. If you're not sure what happened with your application, if you can't remember, please email us and we can work with you to figure out if you should submit a second one or not. Generally the process, and I think my colleagues have kind of touched on this, we're all using the same timeframes of October 5th to October 30th to accept applications. For us, what we do is you'll upload required documents as a nonprofit into our system. We'll first validate you as an organization to make sure you're a valid nonprofit. Once that happens, your grant application will be moved over to a different team. We'll assess them based on different priorities and different criteria. We won't make any decisions until sort of the November, December timeframe, and hope to have all of our grant agreements done well ahead of the holidays. And then everyone starts working away. And if you have retrospective costs that you would like us to cover, again, please make sure to note those in your application. For the other program, which is open to registered charities, qualified donees, and nonprofit organizations, this is offering free PPE and training to those organizations. We'll go into what that means in a second, but generally the criteria are very similar. We're looking for organizations who are doing direct service delivery and who need to equip their personnel with PPE and need to give their personnel training. We're looking for organizations who are, established in Canada, who've been operating for at least since December, who have that kind of internal control mechanism in place and have a governance structure. I would also say that we're typically trying to only provide this PPE to organizations that work in low and medium risk environments. So these are non-medical PPE kits. So this is not for hospitals or medical environments. So just keep that in mind. There are also we have limited PPE and training left, so we have some additional preferences that we may need to look at. So those who are really undertaking the direct service delivery again, addressing a pressing social inclusion need through that direct service delivery. And we're also looking at your unrestricted cash reserves to see how financially vulnerable your organization is. We recognize that PPE, although much more available now than it was in May, the last time we did this presentation, it is still expensive, and we recognize it's a cost to each organization. So the PPE, so what comes in a kit? So it's 2 pieces of a 2-piece PPE kit. It's 2 pairs of gloves and a non-medical disposable mask. So when you apply, you'll have to put in how many volunteers and how many staff need the PPE. And when you punch that number in, just remember that each person will basically get a 60-day supply of those kits. So it's generally meant to be used for like a 4 to 8 hour period of time. And so that's what you will get shipped to your location. On the training side, what's the training? So the training is an online self-directed training, so your personnel can take it kind of at their own pace whenever they're available, whenever they have some time. It takes about 40 minutes to complete. After they've completed it, they can come back and do a refresher. So anyone who got approved in the first round, you can definitely go back and take a look, especially now as we're kind of approaching the second wave. And the training will be available to complete until March 31st, 2021. And it just covers different things around how to make sure disease isn't transmitted through your hands and your mouth, how to take on and off your PPE properly, that kind of stuff. The process is very similar. So again, we're not making any decisions on the PPE and training until November and December. If you're a nonprofit, we'll have to validate your organization. If you're a charity, registered or qualified donee, we just quickly kind of check the CRA site to make sure you're in good standing. So please make sure you provide your registration number to us or the name of your organization. And then we would ship out the PPE to your locations and provide you online training codes to access the training program. On our website, which is www.redcross.ca/community organizations, we have tons of different resources for you. So there's program guidelines for each program. There's different quick one-pagers if you just want to take a quick scan of what you need to do to apply. There's sort of a process map of what to expect once you've applied. There's lots of frequently asked questions. There's the terms and conditions that you'll have to agree to if you do get awarded a grant or PPE or training. There's the definitions of vulnerable populations that we're using for this program, which have been provided to the 3 intermediaries by ESDC. There's technical guidelines, so a user manual of screenshots of all of the application forms and how to kind of work through them. And then there's also a video for each application form as well, if you just want to sit there and watch it go through. So that's the website. It's the same as before. Nothing has changed there. And then finally, onto the application site. So here, when you go to our website, you'll see like little red Apply Now buttons. So click there. And then when you go to the next slide, sorry, thank you. You'll get into the system. You just log in. You can toggle the language at the top there if you'd like, between English and French. Everything is bilingual, of course. You have to register for the site if you haven't already. If you registered in round 1, you don't have to register again. You can just use your existing username and password to get in. And then when you get in, you'll have to find which application form you want to apply to. So if you're a nonprofit, you can apply to both programs that the Red Cross is offering. If you are a registered charity or a qualified donee, you can only apply to the PPE and training program. So just keep that in mind when you do that. And then that's our email address. I know it seems like a generic email address. I promise there are lots of happy helpers behind that email address waiting to get your emails and respond. And then we also have a call center available. The phone number is there, and they're happy to field any questions that you have. The one caveat I would say is that our call center agents are super helpful, but they won't be able to provide you specific information on, you know, if a grant activity will be eligible and things like that. So if you have kind of more specific things, please email us instead and we can kind of engage with you in that way. And that's it. Thanks, Kathy.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. You guys are probably overloaded. There's a lot of information that we just threw at you in the last 40 minutes or so. Thanks to everyone who has submitted questions throughout the entire webinar. We've had lots of questions come in, lots of questions along the same lines. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can in the next few minutes that we have. We won't, unfortunately, be able to address any questions about individual or specific files, so we're trying to keep it more broad at this point, but you can always follow up with a particular organization after the webinar is finished. So let's take a look at some of the questions that we have coming in. Okay, so Emily touched on this about retroactive costing for if you're applying for the Red Cross. We'll put that question as well to the community foundations and the United Way. Is retroactive costing permitted across all the organizations? Melanie, why don't we start with you in community foundations?
Sure, Kathy. Yes, it is eligible. You can go back until April 1st, 2020.
Great. And Deborah for the United Way?
Hi, it may vary locally, but we are generally looking at October through March for all of the funding.
Great, fantastic. Deborah, while we still have you up, so if an organization did apply in round 1, can it apply for a different project in round 2?
Yes.
Nice and simple. We gotta like those kind of answers. Emily, back to you at the Canadian Red Cross. We have a question. If we received PPE and training in round 1, can we apply again for more?
Unfortunately, we are trying to make sure that everyone has access to the PPE and training. So if you did receive PPE and training in round 1, then we'd prefer that you not apply this time around, just to give others the opportunity. However, I will caveat that to say, we know some organizations applied only for training or only for PPE in the first round. If those organizations would like to apply for the opposite thing that they did not receive for this round, that can be definitely taken a look at.
All right, thank you very much for that. Melanie, over at Community Foundations, will community foundations hold off on awarding funding in the second round until all the applications have been received?
Yes, This round, it will be a fixed deadline. So all decisions and review will take place after October 30th once the portal closes.
And actually, that's probably a good question to put to all three organizations. So Emily at the Red Cross.
Yep, so we're starting to make decisions in November, December as well. So same thing. We'll try and alert everyone kind of at the same time, but it'll really depend on the volume that we get. If your organization is not eligible, so for example, if you're a nonprofit who applies and you don't have the required documentation, or you're a charity that applies inadvertently to the granting program, we are going to be letting you know that earlier on so that we can redirect you to one of the other intermediaries or try to work with you to get those missing documents in.
Okay, and Deborah, how's it working at the United Way?
Sorry, I missed the question.
So it's along the lines of how applications are being received and awarded. Is it on a rolling basis or after the October 30th deadline?
Right, thank you. So for all three intermediaries, we are not doing rolling applications. There was some variation in the first round, but in this round, we've all agreed to fixed deadlines. We launched yesterday and all of us are closing on October 30th, and decisions will be made thereafter looking at the whole portfolio.
All right, thank you for that. Hopefully that clears up that question. Melanie at Community Foundation. So we have a question about qualified donees. Can you please explain, does that include registered nonprofits as well?
So the best way to check is we check against the Canadian Revenue Agency website of listed qualified donees. So we'd ask that you go online and check to see if your organization qualifies as is deemed a qualified donee if it shows up in their qualified donee listing.
Okay, thank you. Emily, a question for the Canadian Red Cross. Unincorporated nonprofits, are they eligible for the granting program through the Red Cross?
Yeah, so they might be. And so what I would say is if you're not sure, please email us and we can definitely set up a conversation. If you want to go ahead and put everything you can into the application system, you'll see that you have to upload different documents. And what we're really looking for is we need those documents to help us understand how your organization operates. So it's not a straight yes or no, but we definitely can fund unincorporated nonprofits, and we can definitely work with you to try and figure out what you need to provide us to make that work.
Okay, so definitely worth having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, here's a kind of a general question. What if your organization is both a registered charity and a nonprofit? Melanie, do you want to take that one?
If you're a registered charity, you can definitely apply through the Community Foundations of Canada. And then maybe I'll pass it over to Emily on the nonprofit side.
Yeah, so if you're both, and it is, I will say that it's not super common, but it's great if you are, then I think what we would say is you can apply to us as a nonprofit, but again, we are confirming with our partners to make sure we're not duplicating any activities or any of the funding. So just make sure that you're applying for two different projects, and also check the kind of rules around how many applications maybe your local United Way or local CFC is also taking from each organization.
All right, and Deborah, we have a question for United Way, and it's about Centraide Montreal. Will they be accepting applications in the second round?
No, as I mentioned in my presentation, they had recently closed their application process for the first round and received a significant number of applications, many of which they found really amazing high quality and were not able to fund. So they will be using the resources from the second round to fund those projects, and they will be in touch shortly with anyone who was part of that application pool.
Great. And Deborah, one of our participants has pointed out that there might be a little bit of a discrepancy in terms of what the funding amount is, the maximum amount. So can you please clarify? According to the guide, the participant indicates that the maximum funding amount is $100,000. However, on the portal, it mentions that it's $50,000. Can you please clarify that?
Sure. So this is one where you have to go to your local United Way or Centraide to find out what their maximum or minimum requirements might be for the application process. The national office did not set minimums or maximums. That's really up to the local jurisdiction to make that decision.
Okay, and then this is a question that applies to all three intermediaries. I have trouble with that word. What is the, can you clarify what the project end date is for each organization? Melanie?
So the project end date is March 31st, 2021, which is coming up soon. Before we know it, we'll be there. And so when you put in your application, keep in mind what will be the project that you'll be able to implement by March 31st, including all granting dollars must be spent by then.
Okay, and Deborah?
We are the same as the community foundations. The end date for all expenses related to this funding is March 31st, 2021, and that would be consistent across all of the United Ways and Centraides.
Great, and Emily at the Red Cross.
Yeah, ours is a little bit different. So ours is February 19th, 2021. And the reason for that is because, and I won't go into like complicated charities law, but as a charity, one of the things we have to do is just make sure that when we're funding nonprofits, we're exercising proper direction and control. And one of the ways we do that is we, in your contracts, will do a holdback. So any of you who got funded in round one, we're holding back somewhere between 10 and 20% of the total funds. And we need to spend those funds and give them to you by March 31st. So we need a little bit of time to get your final report in, review it, and then pay you out the last amount. So that's why our data is a little bit backed up.
Okay, and then a question for Melanie is, can they resubmit, or do they need to resubmit if the project in the first round was only partially funded?
Yes, if it was only partially funded, we do ask that you resubmit your application through our portal.
Great. And then in terms of the recorded sessions, where will participants be able to find these recorded sessions across all three organizations? Melanie, we'll start with you.
Sure. So you can visit our website at www.communityfoundations.ca, and later today or definitely tomorrow, the session will be put up there.
And Deborah?
The same for United Way Centraide. Just visit our website. This will be there, as well as the link to all of the local United Ways and Centraides across the country, because we have full coverage across the country.
And Emily?
It's just redcross.ca/community organizations. And so it'll be up there hopefully today or tomorrow.
There's tons of information across all three websites there. Is it possible a participant is asking to get a copy of the application so that they know the information that they have to pull together before actually going into the application portal? Deborah?
So I would recommend being in touch with your local United Way and Centraide. They're making themselves available to provide all kinds of applicant support. In many cases, they will share the application. Sometimes it's electronic, and so it may be more complicated, but they will work very closely with you to make sure you're aware of the information that you need in order to apply.
And Melanie?
Yeah, absolutely. If you visit our website and under the Emergency Community Support Fund, there's a host of materials to support you, and one being the application form. So you can read that through. I'd recommend reading alongside the FAQs and the applicant guide to assist you as you prepare.
Okay, and Emily?
Yeah, so same. So on our website, there's a few different things. So there's the program guidelines for each of the programs that we're offering. And in there, there'll be a list of everything you need to kind of keep in mind. There's also an eligible costing guide to make you understand sort of what we can fund and what we can't fund, as well as a video to like walk through both applications. There's someone who has a lovelier voice than me doing a narration of those videos. And then also user guides if you just want to print it out and or have it on your screen as you go shot by shot through the application forms. There's lots of different tools. Plus we have us, you can email us, and our call center can also help you navigate.
Yeah, lots of information out there. And Deborah, just before we start to wrap up here, a few people are asking, what if there is not a local United Way?
So we would recommend that you go to our website and type in your postal code, and you'll be directed to the United Way or Centraide that is providing service to that area. There's very few areas of Canada that are not covered.
Okay, and before we go, one final question here for, we'll do the Red Cross and then we'll take one from each organization. So Emily, will the Red Cross look at unsuccessful applications from round one?
So the general rule is you can submit 2 applications across both rounds. There are definitely nuances, and I know everyone has really specific questions about their organization. So if you're not sure, please send us an email and we can look up your previous application and let you know kind of how that rule applies to you.
Okay, and Melanie, over at Community Foundations, are all community foundations participating?
So if you go on our website, there's a list of which community foundations are participating, and some are still getting onboarded. So check back. But if you're ready to apply, just simply choose Community Foundations of Canada in the drop down, and we'll make sure it gets to the right place to be reviewed. So no matter where you are in Canada, you are eligible to apply.
Okay, fantastic. And Deborah, will wrap things up with you for the United Way. If organization was denied in the first round, can they find out if it was because they were ineligible versus funds being exhausted?
Sure. Feel free to reach out to your local United Way in Centraide, and they'll provide you with the information that they have available to them in all cases. And thanks again to everyone for taking the time to be on the call, and good luck to all of you.
All right, so unfortunately we're running out of time. We're going to have to start closing things there. If you have any additional questions or you need further clarification, you can head to the 3 different websites, as was mentioned a few times throughout the webinar this afternoon. And we'll also be posting the contact information for each intermediary in the chat. Before we go, we have a short survey, a quick poll that we would like you to fill out. If you wouldn't mind doing that, there's just a few questions, and let us know what your feelings are on what the webinar was like today. And by doing this, it's up on your screen now. Just take a second to fill it out, and your feedback, it really helps us improve the kind of service that we're providing and improve our work to the community groups. So while people are doing that, thank you again for your participation today. We had good representation from right across the country. And we want to thank you for your continued efforts in supporting the communities.